Everybody, JC here with another T&I toy review, and for today's review we're going to take a look at the new DC Collectibles 6-inch scale, the new Batman Adventures Mr. Freeze figure. Now this figure comes packaged in the same style of packaging that we saw with the first figure in this line, Batman, which was also based on his appearance in that new Batman Adventures animated series. The second figure in the line that was released was Catwoman, which was based on the original Batman the Animated Series, and those figures have a little bit different packaging. But Batman, Mr. Freeze, and also Two-Face, which came out this week as well, all are based on the Batman Adventures cartoon and come in the standardized blue packaging that has Batman, Nightwing, and Robin in the background. You've got the figure clearly displayed, you've got the Batman 75th anniversary logo up in the top corner, and the name of the character off to the side. And then down below we have the name, the new Batman Adventures, since this figure is based on that cartoon. Off to the side of the packaging it tells us that this is the third figure in the assortment, and that the figure was sculpted by Gentle Giant Studios. On the back of the packaging we just have a generic image of Batman, Nightwing, and Robin. Basically the same image as on the front, but with blue, done in blue colors as opposed to the black, and then the background is black, so they've kind of just reversed the colors on it. Okay, so let's get this figure open and take a look at what's inside. Okay, so here's a look at the figure outside of the packaging. Now this version of Mr. Freeze, again, is based on his appearance in the new Adventures, or the new Batman Adventures animated series, specifically based on the episode called Cold Comfort. And in that episode it was established that basically Mr. Freeze's body had been destroyed by the disease or the affliction that he had, and was now basically the only thing left of him was his head, and that his body was now basically a robot. So the figure itself is based on that, and more specifically the accessories that come with this figure. So before we look at the figure, let's take a look at all the accessories that the figure comes with. Okay, so this figure, like with the previous figures in this line, come with a number of accessories, including several pairs of interchangeable hands. It actually has three sets of hands. So the set of hands that come attached to the figure when you first open it are a pair of closed-fisted hands for punching action. He then has a pair of hands that are basically completely open. And then the third pair of hands are grippy type hands. The right hand is specifically made for holding his ice gun. He kind of has the trigger finger pose to fit through the gun trigger. The other hand is open to like hold stuff. You can kind of wedge the ice gun in this hand if you wanted to, but it doesn't really hold it very well. He also comes with a figure stand like we've seen with the other figures, and this is basically exactly the same one that we saw with Catwoman. It's got the extended arm with the little grippy pieces, and then it's got the base with images showing Mr. Freeze and the Batman New Adventures logo. He of course also comes with his ice gun. It's a pistol. It looks very true to what we see in the cartoon, and it's basically all black. And then finally he comes with a pair of robotic legs that will attach to his head. So as I mentioned, the figure is based on the episode called Cold Comfort, and in that episode it's revealed that basically Freeze's head is the only thing left of his actual human body. And so the head does detach from the figure with a little peg, and then you'll find that on the bottom of the head, it's actually on the bottom of the collar piece. So the dome is removable on the figure, and you'll notice that you can also take the head off of the collar piece if you want to. And in fact, if you wanted to, you can just put the head on the body without the collar piece, and it does actually fit pretty good on there. I don't know why you would necessarily, but it is an option to you. But anyway, so you take that collar piece and you notice there's 4 holes. Well, there's actually 5, but the middle hole is to fit on the figure. And then it's got 4 holes on the bottom. And that's basically each of these little robotic legs, which have no articulation. They're just plastic, but there's no articulation on the legs. But you'll notice on the end of them there's little ball joints. And so what you want to do is you want to just put the ball joints in those little holes. Now I will note that it can be somewhat difficult to kind of get those ball joints, at least on my figure, into those holes. You've got to push really hard, so just be careful when you're doing it that you don't break the legs, because, you know, like I said, at least with my figure you do have to use pretty significant force, at least initially, to get those spider legs in there. And then once you have the spider legs on, then it'll stand. You can put the head back on the collar piece and then put the dome over the head. And then it kind of recreates that scene where he comes walking out in front of Batman and Batgirl and basically explains what's happened to him. As I mentioned, the legs themselves don't really have any articulation. You can kind of move the legs at the ball joint, kind of do them up and down a little bit, spread them out more, have them closer together with each other, but the legs themselves don't have any articulation, and the head with the legs stands almost as tall as the body, but not quite. And you know, it's pretty cool. It would have been kind of cool, like in the cartoon, you know, the chest of the robot actually opens up and the head kind of climbs in. It would have been cool if they could have recreated that somehow, you know, if the legs could fold up or something and fit inside, but I understand that that's probably not very practical, so I don't fault the figure for that. It's just something that would have been cool if they could have pulled that off. But still, it's kind of a cool feature that they, you know, made it so you could recreate that robot head scene from the episode. So the figure stands just a little bit under 7 inches tall. It's the tallest figure so far in this line from DC Collectibles. Here he is next to the Batman figure, and you can see he's definitely taller than Batman, as he should be, because Freeze was definitely a tall character in the cartoon. Here he is next to the Catwoman figure, and again is definitely taller than Catwoman. Catwoman's probably the smallest figure in the line so far. And just for a couple other comparisons, here he is next to Mattel's 4-inch multiverse Mr. Freeze figure based on the Arkham video games. And then here he is next to DC Collectibles 7-inch Greg Capullo Mr. Freeze, the new 52 version. Overall detail on this figure is pretty nice. There are a few paint blemishes in the line work. You can see some black line work throughout the blue portions of the costume, and there is a little bit of sloppiness there, especially on the left arm. And I noticed this seemed to be the case with both figures that were at my comic book shop. So I don't know if that's an error that's going to be across the board or what, but you know, definitely there's a little bit of sloppiness there. But otherwise, I think the paint apps are pretty good. I definitely like the head sculpt on this figure. I think that looks really good and very true to what you saw in the cartoon. The figure is basically black with that kind of sky blue, and I don't know, it may look a little greener on camera than it really is, but it is pretty much sky blue is the paint color. And then he's got red eyes, which look really nice. Articulation is pretty standard with what we've seen from the other figures in this line. The head can turn left and right. You do have to take his little dome thing off first to turn the head, but he does have good rotation there. It also rotates a little bit at the neck piece because it's just on a ball joint as well. But for the most part, you want to turn him at the head, not the neck piece. And he does even have a little bit of up and down movement. More up, he can look up more than he can look down. Arms are on your standard ball hinge joints, so he can get his arm out pretty good. And then he's got pretty good rotation. You have to kind of rotate it outwards because of the way the costume's designed, but he does have good rotation there. The elbows are single hinge joints, but with the way the arms are sculpted, he can't really bend his elbows very well. That's about as much as he can bend his elbow, so he's somewhat limited there. The hands are attached with those ball joints, and they do all the hands do have hinges, so he has up and down movement as well as the rotation. Now, one thing I want to notate about the hands is, at least on my figure, the ball joints, you can't push the hands in totally so that you don't see that separation between the hand and the arm, and so it can look a little funny to me depending on how you pose the hands and which hands you're using. But you can see there's a little bit of separation between the hands and the actual arm, where the joint isn't quite I can't seem to get it pushed in quite all the way. And I've tried, so I don't know if that's just with my figure or if that's a problem with all of them. It's not that major, but just something I wanted to point out. He has a diaphragm joint where he can swivel there at the midsection. He really doesn't have any ab crunch. And then the legs are with those weird hinge joints. And like with all the figures, you have those pins that are exposed on the front. But he can do the splits pretty good. Oops, knocked his head off. And then you can get his arm or his legs out forward like that. And he doesn't have any kind of thigh swivel. Single hinge knee, but he can bend his knee pretty good. He's got a swivel at the boot cuff, and then he does have hinges at the feet, so you can get some up and down movement. And it actually has pivot, so you got ankle pivot there as well. And then the feet have 2 peg holes on the bottom. And one thing I just want to recommend when you're posing the figure, I would recommend caution, especially here in the crotch area with these joints. They do seem to be a little bit delicate, so I know some of you have had problems with on these figures with breaking, with the figures breaking. So I would just I haven't had any problems with my figure. This joint has gotten a little bit loose on the one leg, but I would just recommend caution when you're posing the legs, especially in the crotch area, that you be careful because those joints do seem kind of delicate to me. Okay, so that's my review. Overall, I really like this figure. I think it looks very true to what we saw in the cartoon. I really like the head sculpt on this figure. I think that came out looking really nice. There is a little bit of sloppiness with the line work on the paint apps in the blue areas of the figure, but I don't think it detracts too terribly from the overall look of the figure. You know, if you are a stickler for perfect paint apps, then you might be a little bit disappointed with that. Articulation is pretty good with this figure, though again I do recommend caution when you're posing the figure around. I do think the joints are a bit on the delicate side. You know, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. Unfortunately, I just think it's a reality with these figures. So just, you know, like I said, be careful when you're posing them. This figure is hitting comic and specialty shops now, along with Two-Face. We'll be taking a look at Two-Face tomorrow, so if you're interested in seeing a review of that figure, please be sure to check back then. And that's it. Please leave a comment. Let us know what you think. If you're so inclined, please like the video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And until next time, I'll catch you later.